Welcome to Consulter Inc. Group and Interlink IQ to conduct a document review utilizing the Foreign Supplier Verification Program or FSVP Products Program under the 21 CFR Subpart L, Foreign Supplier Verification Programs for Food Importers 1.501. First, check if the document title matches the uploaded file name on the dashboard. In this instance, we do have the same titles as the FSVP product program. Next, both must have the same document code. For this example, we do have 1.501.P0. Since this is a template, we indicate the PCQI as the account initials. However, we can customize the code based on the company's initials. For the page number, we use the page X of Y format. Ensure that it reflects the current page position and the total page number of the document. Then, insert the company logo here, together with the company name and address, and enter the designated department. For the originated by section, it can be the food safety, quality assurance, or the quality control personnel of the company. The originator ensures the implementation of the quality management and document control system. Enter the name of the originator, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date originated. For the reviewed by section, it can be the personnel assigned in the Quality Management Department who reviews the drafted document or its revision for accuracy and implementation. Enter the name of the reviewer, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date reviewed. For the approved by section, it must be the person in the C-level management who has the approval authority. Enter the name of the approver, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date approved. The revision date is the same as the date originated or drafted by the author. For the effective date, it is the date the document was signed and approved. The publication date is when the document is published for distribution and initiated personnel training. The implementation date is when the document is distributed and personnel training is completed. For the supersedes, put original for the initial issuance of the document. For any revisions, reflect the initial revision date before the current revision. Please be reminded that this section must be properly filled out to be compliant. Now, we will focus on the components of the program. First, purpose. The purpose is the implementation of any certification standard or compliance with a regulatory requirement. For this program, it is for the implementation of the 21 CFR Subpart L, Foreign Supplier Verification Programs for Food Importers, under Clause 1.501. The purpose of this program is enumerated as follows. 1. To comply with 21 CFR 117.405 requirements to establish and implement a supply chain program, a receiving facility that is an importer, in compliance with the Foreign Supplier Verification Program requirements per 21 CFR Part 1 Subpart L, FSVP for food importers. 2. To comply with 21 CFR Part 1 Subpart L, FSVP Section 1.501 requirements for the foods under FSVP. To determine an importer and exemption product for FSVP. Fourth, to specify the requirements applicable to all food imported or offered for import into the United States and to the importers of such food. The second component is scope. The scope of the program is based on the purpose and serves as a guide in defining and describing the layout of the procedure. The scope of this program is enumerated as follows. 1. Regulatory for FSVP importers. 2. Statutory and regulatory for FSVP exemption products. 3. Regulatory for FSVP modified products. Third component is policy. The policies are the rules set by the company as their implementation guide. The policies of this program is enumerated as follows. 1. The Foreign Supplier Verification Program applies to all food imported or offered for import into the United States and to the importers of such food. 2. The company has documented information of the FSVP importer. 3. The company has a documented product description of each received products from the foreign supplier and approved by the senior management. The fourth component is procedure. The procedure is the step-by-step process and the actual implementation of the policy. 1. Regulatory for FSVP importers including conducting supplier verification activities, conducting corrective actions to importers, establish and follow written procedures to ensure that they import foods only from foreign suppliers, approved based on an evaluation of the risk posed by the imported food, FDA U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, U.S. Food and Drug, the supplier's performance, or when necessary, temporarily, from unapproved suppliers whose foods are subjected to adequate verification activities before being imported. Importers must develop, maintain, and follow an FSVP for each food brought into the United States and the foreign supplier of that food. If the importer obtains a certain food from a few different suppliers, a separate FSVP is required for each of those suppliers. Similarly, if the importer obtains many different foods from a single supplier, a separate FSVP is required for each food. Certain importers that are also manufacturers or processors are deemed in compliance with most FSVP requirements. Following compliance with the supply chain program requirements under the Preventive Controls Rules. Implements preventive controls for the hazards in the food in accordance with the requirements. Importers who are not required to implement preventive controls under those rules in certain specified circumstances. Examples of such circumstances include when the type of food could not be consumed without application of preventive control, or when the customer significantly minimizing or preventing identified hazards, and they comply with requirements for disclosures and written procedures. The evaluation of the risk posed by the imported food and the supplier's performance is re-evaluated at least every 3 years or when new information becomes known about a potential hazard or the foreign supplier's performance. Importers are not required to evaluate food and supplier or conduct supplier verification activities if they receive adequate assurances that a subsequent entity in the distribution chain, such as the importer's customer, is processing the food for food safety in accordance with applicable requirements. The FDA has extended the compliance date to obtain these written assurances for 2 years. However, as required by the final rule, importers must disclose in documents accompanying that the food is not processed to control the identified hazard. Verification of their foreign suppliers are producing food in a manner that provides the same level of public health protection as the preventive controls or produce safety regulations as appropriate, and to ensure that the supplier's food is not adulterated and is not misbranded with respect to allergen labeling. Next on procedure is statutory and regulatory for FSVP exemption products. Exemptions for juice and fishery products and ingredients. Importers of certain juice and seafood products. This FSVP does not apply with respect to juice, fish, and fishery products that are imported from a foreign supplier that is required to comply with and complies with the requirements in 21 CFR Part 120 or Part 123. If the import's juice or fish and fishery products are subject to 21 CFR Part 120 or Part 123 respectively, it complies with the requirements applicable to importers of those products under 120.14 or 120.12. Certain importers of juice or seafood raw materials or other ingredients subjected to Part 120 or Part 123. It does not apply with respect to any raw materials or other ingredients that import and use in manufacturing or processing juice subject to Part 120 or fish and fishery products subject to Part 123. Provided that it is in compliance with the requirements in Part 120 or Part 123 with respect to the juice or fish or fishery product that you manufacture or process from the imported raw materials or other ingredients. Exemptions for food imported for research or evaluation. FSVP does not apply to food that is imported for research or evaluation use, provided that such food not intended for retail sale and not sold or distributed to the public, labeled with the statement food for research or evaluation use, imported in a small quantity that is consistent with the research, analysis or quality assurance purpose, the food is used only for this purpose, and any unused quantity is properly disposed of. Accompanied, when filing entry with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, by an electronic declaration that the food will be used for research or evaluation purposes and will not be sold or distributed to the public. Exemption for food imported for personal consumption. This FSVP does not apply to food that is imported for personal consumption, provided that such food is not intended for retail sale and is not sold or distributed to the public. Food is imported for personal consumption only if it is purchased or otherwise acquired by a person in a small quantity that is consistent with a non-commercial purpose and is not sold or distributed to the public. Exemptions for alcoholic beverages. This FSVP does not apply with respect to alcoholic beverages that are imported from a foreign supplier that is a facility that meets the following two conditions. First, Under the Federal Alcohol Administration Act, or Chapter 51 of Subtitle E of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, the facility is a foreign facility of a type that, if it were a foreign facility, would require obtaining a permit from, registering with, or obtaining approval of a notice or application from the Secretary of the Treasury as a condition of doing business in the United States. Second, under Section 415 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, the facility is required to register as a facility because it is engaged in manufacturing or processing one or more alcoholic beverages. This FSVP does not apply with respect to food that is not an alcoholic beverage that is imported from a foreign supplier described in 4.2.4.1 of this section, provided that such food is in prepackaged form that prevents any direct human contact with such food, constitutes not more than 5% of the overall sales of the facility as determined by the Secretary of Treasury. This FSVP does not apply with respect to raw materials and other ingredients that are imported for use in alcoholic beverages, provided that the imported raw materials and other ingredients are used in manufacturing, processing, packing, or holding of alcoholic beverages. Such manufacturing, processing, packing, or holding is performed by the importer. The importer is required to register under Section 415 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. The importer is exempt from the regulations in accordance with 21 CFR 117.5. Inapplicability to food that is transshipped or imported for processing and export. This FSVP does not apply to food that is transshipped through the United States to another country and is not sold or distributed to the public in the United States. That is imported for processing and future export that is not sold or distributed to the public in the United States. Inapplicability to U.S. food returned. This FSVP does not apply to food that is manufactured, processed, raised, or grown in the United States, exported, and returned to the United States without further manufacturing, processing in a foreign country. Inapplicability to certain meat, poultry, and egg products. This FSVP does not apply with respect to meat food products that at the time of importation are subject to the requirements of the U.S. Department of Agriculture under the Federal Meat Inspection Act. Poultry products that at the time of importation are subject to the requirements of the USDA under the Poultry Products Inspection Act. Egg products that at the time of importation are subject to the requirements of the USDA under the Egg Products Inspection Act. Next on procedure is regulatory for FSVP modified product. Modified FSVP products from very small importers and importers of food from certain small suppliers. Very small importer, consistent with the definition of very small business in the Preventive Controls Rules, $1 million for human food and $2.5 million for animal food of annual sales, combined with the U.S. market value of food that is imported, manufactured, processed, packed, or held without sale. Products from importers of certain small foreign suppliers are subject to modified FSVP products. Those small suppliers are: facilities are subject to modified requirements under the Preventive Controls Rules because they qualify the facilities. Farms that are not covered. Farms under the Produce Safety Rule because they average $25,000 or less in annual produce sales or because they meet requirements for a qualified exemption. Shell egg producers with fewer than 3,000 laying hens. Each of these types of producers is either exempt from their underlying FDA food safety regulations or subject to modified requirements, mostly, and in some cases entirely, because of the size of these firms. There are certain modified products for foods from a foreign supplier in a country whose food safety system recognized as comparable or determined to be equivalent of the United States system. Dietary supplements are subject to modified products and vary according to a number of factors, including whether the imports are finished product or an ingredient or component. The same applies to importers whose customer is required to establish such specifications and verify if met, except that the importer has to obtain written assurance that its customer is complying with those requirements. The fifth component is responsibility. The responsibility of the person is indicated. It covers what to perform to comply with the procedure or policy. In this program, the responsible personnel are the following. First, FSVP importer, CEO, or president. Determining known or reasonably foreseeable hazards with each food. Evaluating the risk posed by a food based on the hazard analysis and the foreign supplier's performance. Using that evaluation of the risk posed by imported food and the supplier's performance to approve suppliers and determine appropriate supplier verification activities. Second, procurement personnel or supply chain and operations manager. Evaluation of suppliers for approval. Conduct foreign supplier verification activities. The sixth component is corrective action. The corrective action is the process of taking appropriate steps to eliminate causes of nonconformities or other undesirable situations. In the event changes are discovered on the incoming material document, inform the party affected by the changes such as the buyer or procurement, quality personnel, management, customer, and supplier. Review the HACCP, preventive control, food safety plan, and apply applicable changes. In the event documents are not present when the material arrives at the facility, reject material, or place on hold or quarantine and call supplier or vendor for documentation. Do not use material until verification is complied with. Review approved foreign supplier registry. Inform management and quality department. Records of corrective actions taken are kept on file. Seventh component is review quality. The review section serves as guidelines for conducting the annual or periodic review. Review by the quality or senior management includes review of the documented approved supplier program to ensure all materials and services that may impact food safety are included. There is an updated register of approved suppliers and finished product register. The product descriptions are up to date. The program specifies actions to be taken when non-compliance is identified. Documented test or inspection methods and corrective actions are followed. Relevant staff is aware of their responsibilities and duties with regard to inspection and receiving of incoming goods. Review of the food safety plan and verification activities. Review of program at least annually. The eighth component is reference documents. The reference documents are the set of documents used to implement and monitor a program, policy, or procedure. In this program, it includes FSVP Importer Information Form, FSVP Products Description Form, FSVP Foreign Supplier Verification Form, FSVP Evaluation Form, FSVP Re-Evaluation Form, HACCP or Food Safety Plan. The ninth component is references. The reference section is composed of guides utilized to implement the program. Examples are the Certification Guide, regulations, and other widely accepted scientific journals, research, and the like. It must comply with the standard format citation, which can be based on either MLA, APA, or Chicago style, and update the access date. The references used in this program are the following: 21 CFR Part 117, Supply Chain Program Section 117.405, Requirement to establish and implement a supply chain program. 21 CFR Part 1, Subpart L, Foreign Supplier Verification Programs for Food Importers, Section 1.501, to what foods do the requirements in this subpart apply? FSPCA, Food Safety Preventive Controls Alliance, FSVP. Lastly, history. The history section is where we can update the program if there are any changes or revisions made in the document. If there is a revision, enter the revision number, the revision date, the description of the change made, the author or originator name, and the title or department of the author or originator. Thank you for participating in this document review. Content presented are for training purposes only and are based on the interpretation of the standards and best practices, and must be customized for your intended use. To fully customize your programs, policies, procedures, forms for records, and lessons for training, you may contact Interlink IQ or Consultaire Inc. at services@interlinkiq.com or enterprise@interlinkiq.com, or simply call 202-982-3002. For free access, visit interlinkiq.com or itblaster.net.